Yeah, you can close out of that.
Please, let's begin. And we start with the roll call, please.
Commissioner Shoemaker.
Present.
Commissioner David.
Present.
Commissioner Gossick Seidman. Vice
Present.
Mayor Moore.
Present.
Mayor Hillman.
Present.
Town Manager Labadie.
Present.
And that's it.
Okay. And while we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, perhaps we'll take a moment of silence for our troops in Afghanistan, as well as all of the Afghanis that are trying to get out of the country.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, do we have any public comments?
There are no public comments today.
Okay, so we'll close public comments. I want to make one small addition to our agenda, and that will be we have additional renderings on the fire insignia. So we'll add that to J when we do the fire budget, probably the most appropriate place to take a peek at it. That was the request that was made. If you recall, just shake your hands.
Yep.
Okay.
Definitely.
So we'll just take a look at those when we do the budget for fire, okay?
Good.
Okay, let's move on to the budget discussion. Start with the town commission on A.
Thank you, Mayor. With that, I'll lead with each one. Any changes that you had requested or asked for or clarifications. I'll let you know if there are any that were made. But as it relates to the town commission, there are no changes that were identified by the commission at our last meeting. So the numbers are the same.
Yeah, I noticed the changes as I went through it. One, thank you very much for taking care of those, and it does look a whole lot better. Makes a lot more sense.
But overall, just to give you a quick overall, one of the main comments that was pervasive through the budget that we went back, took a look at and corrected were personnel costs were a little bit overstated for the requested budget. So that brought the budget numbers down about 137,000, which was corresponded with a reduction in the transfer from reserves to balance the budget. And again, all of the movement of dollars or projected movement of dollars from the general fund reserves is in support of the fire service department initiative that the commission is taking.
Right. Okay, anybody have any questions or comments on the town commission portion? No? Okay, let's move on to the town manager.
That one as well, we did not identify any necessary changes or clarifications.
I do have one question. And
Yes,
that's under the activity through 8/31. Page 2, the 78,000. Is that correct? And if it is, would you like to comment on it?
Wait, I gotta get to the right one. I will, 1 second.
It's page 2 of 2.
Yep, getting there. Okay. So in the town managers, 78,000, which one is that?
78,684, page 2 of 2.
Page 2 of 2. That's all operating expenses to date,
Yeah.
totals 78,000, correct?
Yeah.
The biggest one being, we did move into, under the current activity, the matrix study was moved into the manager's budget. So that's why you see a
okay.
big number there.
Well, there you have it.
And that was, most of that 78,000 is the matrix study.
Got it. Okay, takes care of that. Anybody have any other comments? Okay.
One question. If
Yep.
under this, you've outlined
lot of the costs, but I'm wondering if, given we're going through some major additions to our town with fire EMS and personnel, how would you manage an additional person if you wanted to hire a person here in terms of budgeting?
So what we would do is we would bring you a specific budget amendment when I bring the job description for the addition that was identified in the study, along with plugging some of the holes we've recognized in operations. Hopefully I'll do that soon. We might be able to, I will let you all know over the next week. I think I should be able to have a job description available for you to take a look at in general classification band, and we could potentially make an addition or change, which I would note for the September 13th. So,
Oh, that'd be great.
so we
Get it
could
that fast.
at least recognize it now. We just, when we put this together, I hadn't got to that granular of a detail, but pretty
Then
close.
we could slot it in then.
We could slot it in there and just recognize either depending on if there's any other changes, we can make those adjustments there.
Right. I just was
Great.
concerned about having that accommodation
Yeah.
available to us.
Just for general purposes, even during the year, we can always make an adjustment,
Correct.
an amended adjustment.
Correct.
Very good. I'm good.
Okay, anything else, anybody, before we move on? Okay, move on to town clerk. If anybody has any comments, just jump in.
There was one comment that the commission made. And that is the activity under personnel services for the current fiscal year, not in the budget year, but the current fiscal year.
Right,
It might be okay. This is through, we got about, let's see, 1, 2,
well, you
3,
adjusted
4.
that.
We got about another month. It'll be close that we might have slightly understated the current fiscal year by 1 or 2% on the personnel cost that may have to be recognized. We do an adjusting budget resolution or a final adjusting resolution, usually in November. Matt will bring you this comprehensive budget adjustment where counts that we may have overspent or underspent are balanced. And you make that final resolution to say that we close the year with a balanced budget. So if we're off a little bit, we will move things around. It looks like we might be slightly understated on the clerks for personnel cost.
So you're suggesting the end of August to date may be understated?
Yep.
Got it.
Not the activity levels, but what we budgeted compared to those, and maybe that what we budgeted is a
The
slightly.
salaries.
Yeah, salaries, thank you.
Yeah,
Yep.
it looked low.
Yep.
Okay. Just one comment. I never realized that elections cost so much.
Nor did I, but Linelda
60
keeps
grand
reminding
for
me.
elections. Whew.
And referendums.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the same thing. Yep.
Killer.
Someday it could reach the cap.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Nope. Okay, move on to finance department. Let's get after the finance department.
Crunch those numbers.
There were no particular requests for changes or modifications in there. The only thing, again, as I mentioned earlier, across all departments, we went and re-looked at personnel or salary costs for the requested, and that was adjusted slightly there. From your last, we came down from 306,100 to now we're representing 296,397. So about 10 grand there of an adjustment.
Okay. Anybody? You good? Okay, move on to legal.
In legal, I just did a quick, we had a footnote conflict that was addressed. And that was basically what we budgeted and what was stated in the footnote, or the footnote wasn't matching. Now they're matching. So that was just a quick Scrivener's error, if you will, in the budget notes.
Yeah. My only comment, if anything, we might be a little low. I know you think you're providing for it. We touched on it before. I mean, just because of fire, but it might hit us the following year. That's all.
Probably the bigger lift.
Yeah, that's all. Anybody have anything else?
Mayor,
Yep.
if we required further legal consult during the fire budget process and the fire negotiations, would that become a portion of the fire budget then, or would it remain in the legal?
It would remain illegal.
Okay, just checking.
That's why I said that we might be
Yeah, I
low, but it
understand.
would probably hit us the following year.
I didn't know
not
if there
this year.
was separate.
I mean, we could, I mean, you have a point. We could have an argument that it should go, but we could have that same argument that if we had an issue in finance that
Sure.
required legal support, maybe it should go in finance.
Understand.
But we
Just wanted to
capture
know.
everything that's legal in legal to date. So I think by consistency, we should keep it there unless somebody disagrees.
Nope.
Okay. Let's move on to Public Works.
Public Works was merely a footnote correction. We had some footnotes left that should have been removed, and those have been corrected.
And would FDOT's R project at some point in time, it's not going to affect this at all in the next budget year anyway, correct?
Correct.
Anybody else or anything? No? Okay. Move on to Post Office.
Post Office, there was a $5,000 downward adjustment of salaries to match what we project. So that was a slight, minor change.
Mm-hmm.
But you had noted that before, I think. Yep.
It's all good. Anything?
Good.
No? Okay, other general?
No budgetary under OGG.
I didn't have anything. Anybody else? Police. Oh, he's hiding. Look at him hiding in the
Police.
corner there. I had one question. Are you comfortable that the 994 on salaries and wages is now correct?
So the activity level were correct. What we did is we had overstated. We were at 1.63, and we took about 100 grand out of next year's projected salaries because we had double counted a few secondary labor costs in the incorrect spot. So that made that adjustment. So we brought that down. But the 994,240 is accurate to date. So
What do you think we'll end up this year at? I mean, we'll be significantly under the 1455.
correct. But as you see, FRS, we didn't calculate correctly, or we projected slightly. So there'll be some adjustments there so that, well, we'll probably have more left in salary, like we over budgeted on salary, under budget on retirement contributions, not an equal proportion, but we need to make that adjustment because you see we're
I do see it.
for
Yes.
364 at 345, and we still have
Yeah.
4 more pay periods. So we're going to have to fix that.
Yep.
So Chief, I hear the Taliban have a surplus of weapons. Maybe we could get a discount or something in a fire sale?
Yes. So I'm still looking then at next year's 1,530,000 and wondering if that's still not high.
It is. It's about 3% high. I left it at about 3% because we still have one vacancy available to hire. And it depends on the step at which we hire. And it gives us maybe a little bit of wiggle room. I could have brought it down a little bit more, probably to the tune of about 40,000. But I just kind of left it there. I could make that adjustment.
No. Okay.
As a practice, we,
Leave
would,
it be.
assuming we're going to have an extra hire to keep it in there.
Yeah.
And then,
Plus, we're going to have some turnover. We always do, and it takes a while to refill
Yeah,
it. So you've got to have some openings there. So
And that's why you see us why you see the over budgeting for the current fiscal year, because we had some change outs where we lost high step or high pay seniority officers that were replaced with new officers. So that really created some traction there of
yeah, I
savings.
recall that.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. All right. Good. Leave it be. I'm with you. Anybody have any other questions, comments?
I just had one question.
Go right ahead.
I just wondered, did the chief feel that we have a need for a jail? I don't think we currently have a holding place, and we used to when I moved here. So given that we're creating a fire department, I just wanted to put that question out there.
No, thank you for the question. We do not have the space in this facility. The rest that we do make, we'll take right to Gun Club Road, right to Palm Beach County Jail. So we've got that pretty down pat. We are able to get away without a holding facility. We don't generate a lot of arrests here, thank God. And the ones we do, we're able to navigate with them and get them right to county jail. But thank you for thinking of that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Anyone? Okay, we'll move on to solid waste then.
No changes in solid waste.
Any questions before we move to the library? Okay, library. Now, we had no issues on the budget on library, but we did have a discussion on anything that might help the library, help improve communications. It wasn't very long ago. I don't know if we had a chance to look into that.
I'm gonna look at Trish. I don't know if we got some numbers from Mark or what's it, Zebedee?
I think we were looking at possibly broadcasting.
Yes, so last week we had Zebedee on site to look at the library to give us a quote. However, he hasn't gotten back to me just yet. He said by this week he'll have a quote over to us. So I don't have any definitive numbers at this time.
Okay, so we'll just hold the discussion, put it on the agenda for our next meeting before we finalize the budget.
Sure, and that first on that September, if we need to add, if you want to add some of those improvements, capital improvements within the library, we could do it at that time.
Okay, let's not forget though.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Okay, Mayor,
Yeah,
Mrs. Linelda, you forgot fire rescue.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what did I forget?
Fire
Fire
rescue.
rescue, mayor.
I think that's on the agenda.
Uh-oh, let's back up. Hold all tickets.
There were no changes made to fire rescue.
Okay, no changes, but we do have some graphics to take a look at.
We do.
Thank you, Linelda. Oh, I get to control it. All three slides, thank you. Okay, before we forget, thank you, Rodrigo. Okay, so come on, work. There we go, whoops. Okay, here's where we left off. I think we got it down to these two as the favored look. Obviously, essentially the same thing, just one being red, the other being white. By the way, what's the name of the town that has white? Green Acres.
Green Acres has
Green
white on white on a white uniform. It looks
They got
good.
white uniforms, no problem. They do have, though, yellow and white fire trucks, by the way. I've never seen that before. So I guess there's no rhyme or reason to what different towns do. So what Rodrigo was asked to do was take some of the color out of the center seal. So here we are. That's basically on the left, our current one, but with all the colors, and then on the right, he just opted to take the light blue out of it and take the orange out of it. In my opinion, looks kind of blah.
The right looks like the ocean's polluted,
Looks,
worse than it might be.
yeah.
Good
Or we try to
observation,
clean it
Now-
up. I vote for the non-polluted.
Obviously we could take other colors out and not those colors, but I think whatever we were to do to take colors out, it would just look kind of washed out.
Absolutely.
Next one is just to take all the color out. Looks even worse.
That looks sad.
So the idea doesn't really work.
So we're back to the first slide, right?
So here we are in the first slide, and I think we're left with making a decision on which way we want to go. there's nothing that says you can't use both. I don't like the idea. I think we pick one and go with it.
I think the one on the left is perfect, Mayor. It's just, we really fine tuned this. And we could have Coral fire trucks.
Yeah, I mean, there's
No
nothing
one has
wrong with,
quarrel.
there's nothing wrong with the one on the left. There's nothing wrong with the one on the right. Your preference is the one on the left. My preference is the one on the right.
So
They're both good. So there's no good and there's no bad. There's 5 of us. So let's see what 3 out of the 5 like. And I think that's where we go. What do you like?
Yeah, I like the white. I like it the way it is. And I didn't know if maybe fire rescue could be in red. The letters could be in red, but I like the one on the right for sure.
Okay. Next.
I agree. I like the one on the right, and I also agree that I would put fire rescue in red as opposed to blue.
Okay, we can certainly have that looked at. John, doesn't matter.
I'm
John.
sorry. Put what on
Okay,
red?
you see, on the white one,
Yeah,
we have fire rescue in blue.
on blue letters.
There's, right,
Yeah.
because it's a white background, we could put them in red letters as opposed to blue letters.
I totally agree with that. It's, you got to have a little more red in the white insignia.
Okay,
What
so,
kind of question is,
yeah,
what if you had the white one for rescue and the red one for the fire? I know that's 2, but it would separate them.
well, but you need patches for uniforms and everything else.
Right. And EMS uniforms would have the white ones and the firefighters would have the red ones.
And what do the captains
That'd be
have? What do the captains have? And what do the chief have? And, you know,
Okay, well,
yeah, we pick one, we go with it.
I'll go with the white
I'll
one.
certainly ask Rodrigo to do the fire rescue, to do that in red, see what it looks like. And that's the end of it. That's the last revision to look at. And then we're done. Okay, everybody happy? Almost happy? Not happy.
My problem with white is it's affiliated more with physicians and hospitals and ambulance and private EMS. Most of private EMS wear a white badge. And so you go to the ER and you sit there and the fire guys come in red, orange. It's just the standard to me. To me, the white, it does not relate to the fire department as much. And I'm not going to change my position.
You
But
don't
if
have
you all
to.
like white, I can go with white and
Yeah,
I'm not
but
going to
you also
cry.
got the red banner and you get the axes.
I know.
That kind of highlights
I'm
it.
not going to cry when I see them go by in white, but I like it.
And maybe red letters.
I'm sorry.
And maybe the red letters too might make it look a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
bit more.
Yeah,
fire.
okay. So I'll ask him to do that and then we'll compare the 2. Okay, Marshall?
Maybe before we get off fire, the selected architects in the room, maybe he could introduce himself since he made the journey out here. We'll be considering the contract on the 21st of September. But since Sam's here, I thought maybe you could just say hi to you all. This is Sam with the PGAL, who's the architect that the internal group selected.
Hello, Sam. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, council members, commissioners. I'm Sam Ferrari. I'm a principal with PGL Architects, and we're excited to be part of this new venture with the town. I live at the south end of Delray, ride my bike by here every other day. It's about 5 minutes from our office, so we can hopefully service you well. A little bit on my background. And it was interesting when you were looking at your patches. I'm the former mayor of the city of Green Acres, and I was involved with the
Is
white
that
patch and
right?
the white uniform and the chartreuse trucks.
Excellent.
So,
Now, were you involved in the selection there?
And part of the selection of the white uniforms was really for coolness and also at night to be visible, especially along the roadways for EMS personnel.
Uh-huh.
Very interesting.
So,
Okay, so
but it
there
was
was a,
interesting to see that, and you're pointing out the trucks, because that was the big controversy in the city at the time.
but there was a
going from red
practical,
trucks to the
there was a
chartreuse.
practical reason to it then.
For both, yeah, the trucks really stand out, especially at night versus a red truck at night. It becomes dimmer to see. And especially along A1A here, it's a narrow road and sometimes the vehicles will be on the roadway. So I think you made some good choices, but back to the architecture, we're excited to be part of this. Also in my past history, I was pretty much involved and was one of the main pushers. The city of Green Acres had a volunteer fire department. We went to a regular fire department. We then went to public safety, cross-trained policemen and firemen. I'm sure the police chief doesn't like to hear that. We don't do that anymore. They don't do that anymore. We ended up back with a standalone fire department. So I was involved with all those transitions, looking at equipment, making sure the equipment would fit in the station, training facilities. So I think we can help you, especially in the program.
He can be very helpful beyond the design of the station.
At the same fee. Thank you.
Absolutely, same thing. Yes, yeah. Wait, don't go away so fast. Do you know where the Eagle Grill is?
Sure.
Yes, I go there all the time. Okay. Okay, we're back on the budget now.
The general funds revenues.
I'm sorry?
You're at the general funds revenues.
Thank you.
So in the general fund revenues, what you would see here since the last time would be the reduction in the amount of funds transferred in from the reserves. So instead of, I think we initially had where is it at? 592. Thanks, Matt. 592 is now, as I'm flipping through all of the pages, 455.
Yeah, we like the previous one.
592.
Yeah.
Well, we may be back there if we added a staff person, as we have discussed here. When we add that person in, I think you'll find yourself right back to the initial budget. So again, everything relatively an immaterial effect. Once we add the position in, we'll probably most likely have to increase the reserve fund balance transfer into balance. But we were already at 592. So we'll probably end up being close back to it at the end.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess I would just comment that that's kind of like just a holding place, right? I mean, last year's budget, we had a 207,000, but then it ends up that we are actually adding to reserves.
Yes, we'll be yes,
this year.
Matt. Yes. Yep.
And I would just, I don't know what the budget looked like for those prior years, but those prior years, it looks like we also added to the general fund balance.
biggest
So
one,
I
yeah.
just, I don't know how to word it, it's a placeholder, right? We don't, it's about what we think.
I always
But-
use the word pledge. We pledge those are the last dollars spent would be out of our reserve. So at the end of the year, like I said, Matt goes and does this balancing budget resolution. And we really find out that if and as we get into the audit, as we underspent certain accounts, it just reduces the amount we actually need to transfer over. But at the beginning, at our best estimates, here's where we're at. And it kind of moves around. But I think you're now in a place where you'll probably be more apt to spend it as we get into the fire service element of it. So I think we're going to be hitting the reserves, as you've all discussed and made the commitment that some level of reserves will be utilized. And I think we start seeing that next year. We're going to start seeing it in the year after. We'll start really getting into the reserves a bit.
I got caught on that. The first time I heard pledge reserves, I wasn't sitting up here. I was in the audience. And I thought that just meant we're taking money out of reserves, putting it into the operating budget. And I didn't like it. Okay. And then I found out later on that it's exactly what Marshall described, last dollar. And over the years, it had never been used.
Right.
I got a little more comfortable very quickly then. But
Right.
yeah, I thought it was money spent. So as it was, I didn't realize pledge meant pledge, not used. Anything else before we move on?
So are we going to discuss expenses, right, for general fund as well? We're talking about the entire general fund, right? So page 44. I just have a question about, is that right? Operating expenses, page 44, that is expenses out of what is that? So we were just on revenues. Is there?
We just went through all of the general fund expense operations. funding department.
Okay,
We
so
just
I'm-
went through this, yeah.
Okay, so I'm on operating expenses for general fund. One question I have, has it ever been considered to have a line item for the cost of inflation for reserves?
I haven't seen it. Matt's done more budgets in his career,
Not
but
really. It's, that kind of cost is embedded within each particular thing. You don't, when you buy pens from Office Depot, you don't pay whatever, 20 cents a pen and then some amount for inflation. They charge you, if the price goes up to 20, from 20 cents to 25, it's just embedded in the cost, and it's embedded in the office supplies, which are within every department's budget. So there's not really a specific line item. It's sort of reflected in the cost that we end up paying.
And we do that with salaries too, which is our
Mhm.
biggest cost, is we project out our commitments under our contracts, the commitments made by the commission, as you will after this budget item. After, we do this budget review with non-merit increases, we look at those, we look at the escalation of healthcare costs and things of that nature. So we project all that out when we put it in here. We look at to those inflationary pressures that come in on all of those items.
And I don't see business doing anything like that either, when doing budgets.
Okay. Library, we did. General funds, we did. Transfer of contingency reserve, we just talked about. Discretionary sales tax, discretionary sales surtax.
No changes there. Those have remained consistent with all the projects that are projected for next year.
Anybody have any questions, comments, discussion?
Not me.
Okay, move on to the building department.
Building department was again, as a special revenue fund. We did make an upward adjustments on the salaries because the commission was comfortable with the addition of the part-time administrative staff person to help with the processing of permits. So that went up a little bit there. But again, that doesn't have an impact per se on the general fund because it's a standalone fund that the permit fees generate the revenue to cover its expenses. But that went up a little bit. So it kind of.
Anybody?
Yes, Mayor. Are
Go
we
ahead.
comfortable fully with the projected building recertification and all that? Are we comfortable that we do have enough staff? And if not, is there any kind of a possible line item part-time, or how will we handle that if it gets super busy due to the alleged oncoming building
They'll
re-inspections?
bring in more.
Yeah, so that's the.
Are we okay with?
Yeah,
where
that's
we
the
are now?
hybrid model that if we need, say,
Yeah.
some additional assistance, Jeff can rely upon CAP Government Services, who we have a contract for, to provide the additional horsepower on a temporary basis. So we have that ability.
Okay, great. Thank you.
But as I understand it, the initial focus will only be on 10 to 15 of these buildings, right? That are the high vulnerability because of their age. And it would seem that could be absorbed, given we're not actually doing the work. We're just.
Yeah, but by setting it up, what we were calling the ladder, we shouldn't get nailed right away with
No.
tons of it.
No.
Now, it's possible that some of the quote newer buildings, might come in. They might jump at it. But again, it's more of an administrative role than, rushing out there and watching it being done. So,
Agree.
yeah. Anything else before we move on to water? We good? Okay. Water system? Water enterprise?
I believe there was a slight adjustment. Let me confirm that. Should be
I don't think it'll order.
No, I kept everything the same. No changes. I think I cleaned up a footnote, but nothing material to the numbers.
Good here on the commission? Okay, sewer?
Sewer.
Sewer is where we see the increase.
What's that?
We see the increase in the sewer, and that's because of our efforts to, maintain it.
Yeah.
Yes, year over year, but from the last review, we did not adjust any numbers. Those all held.
Yeah, we were okay then, but something might have come up. Somebody sees something they want to question. John, you got anything? We're good?
I'm good.
Everybody else? Okay, that takes care of it.
So then two things you may consider at the September 13th, and we'll get some insights to that, which would be the additional position that was identified in the report, bringing that online. And then potentially, once we get the quotes for the upgrades to the library community room, will be the additional consideration. Everything else will stay the same as presented to you today and accepted by the commission.
Correct.
Good.
Well done. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, Matt did a good job.
Okay, let's move on to our fund balance research.
Oh, there it is. I should have grabbed it.
Oh,
Thank you.
Okay. And it's all yours, Natasha. Oh, we're already up.
Oh. I thought I did that. Okay. So I put in all my slides back, but I really only updated a couple of slides. So since the last time I presented work so far on the fund balance analysis, I was able to present it to the Financial Advisory Board. They did not have time to prepare. I just pretty much sprang it on them to kind of plant a seed to see what kinds of things that they come up with. So I expect, as they think about it, they might, come up with some different ideas. The one initial reaction that I got was, with the interest rates being so low, why wouldn't we borrow instead of use the cash in the general fund? And then that's when we talked about the expenses of borrowing. So since you guys have seen the presentation, I did add in some of the other municipalities that you guys wanted to see for comparison. So this slide compares Highland Beach to our neighbors and other similar types of municipalities. So one that is added is Lighthouse Point. Their annual budget is 17 million. They have a pretty formal policy that they have put in their annual report. It's pretty thorough, and their policy is basically they set a minimum of 31%, and that's to cover disaster recovery, a portion for bridges, and also like a budget stabilization like we have. And so it turns out that they like to have at least a minimum of 31%. And then, from year to year, it fluctuates. So their latest annual budget had a level of 40%. From what I could tell, it was pretty sophisticated analysis of what they did as far as what they've decided to set aside as minimums. They obviously have their own fire, police. They probably have more that's at risk with commercial payers compared to us. The next one that I added was Ocean Ridge. As you know, Boynton Beach provides their fire rescue services. They basically hold 55% of their annual expenditures in their fund balance, and their annual expenditures are 8 million. So it's a little bit less than ours. Ours is 12 million. There's Highland Beach. As you saw, our current policy states that we have a minimum of 25, and we're currently holding 77. The next one is Indian River Shores. So that is north of Hutchinson Island. They are holding 83% of their annual expenditures. Their budget is about half of ours. So their annual expenditures are 6 million. They have that public safety model where the fire and the police are providing the public safety. And then Juneau, their minimum balance that they want to hold is 50% of their annual expenditures. Their annual expenditures are 7 million. It's a little more than half of what we have, and they are currently holding 107%. Fire is provided by Palm Beach County. They do have their own police. They get water from outside of the town. So everything else is pretty much the same as far as my slides go. I don't know if you want to go through each slide again, but one thing I did add was, it's not here. I did add a new slide, which I think is in your agenda. It's in your printout, but it's not one of the, whatever reason it's not up there. But so I did want to maybe just, specifically talk about some action items. And the two that I thought we should specifically talk about is, what are the preferred level of expenditures? I'd like to revisit the current policy. So I did include the current policy in our deck. So, in case you want to refer to it, as I mentioned, it's 25%. So what I would like to do is, perhaps revisit that 25% if we like the 25%, or perhaps change it. And then also talk about if there's an upper threshold that we want to consider. And once we meet that upper threshold, perhaps that is excessive. And this ties into my comment about the budget, about the inflationary costs. So some other thoughts that I had about the surplus that we're carrying. I looked up, what's inflation that we've experienced over this past year. It ranges, but let's say an estimate of inflation is 3%. You can easily argue, if you look at the history of what's published, it ranges from, the latest estimates are 5.4%. At the high end, at the low end, it's 1.4%. So if you pick an inflationary estimate of 3%, let's say, I just thought, well, maybe if we looked at the cost of inflation on the unassigned reserves, we look so closely at some of the other expenses that we have in our budget. And in my opinion, that is an expense that we should consider as far as, what's the cost of carrying these reserves in our balance. So, for that $6 million, assuming inflation is 3%, that's costing $180,000. And is that something that we should take into consideration, like we do all other expenses as we go through the budget process? So I guess this also kind of ties into the insurance. So as I was looking at the insurance, as I had mentioned before, in looking at this 25%, our minimum, so 16.7% of it is for budget stabilization. Seems like that is what we need to have, because there's a couple of months where we're waiting on the tax revenues. So we need that 16.7 to cover, the October and November before we get the December tax revenue. Our retention for, let's say if a hurricane were to affect us, we have a 5% deductible on our insured value is about 26 million. So that's about 1.3 million is what our retention would be for property. So right at that 25% minimum, you back out the 16.7 for the budget stabilization, it leaves us about 8.3%. That's about $1 million. It's 1 month's worth of our budget. The numbers work out nicely because it's a $12 million annual budget. So it leaves us about 1 million. In my opinion, maybe we're a little short on the disaster recovery portion. So I guess I'd throw out for discussion, perhaps instead of 8.3% a month's worth for the disaster recovery, to bump that up to 2 months worth, which would be about $2 million. So that would cover the 1.3 for the retention for the property. And then the other, as I was talking through the insurance, another big cost, which you don't get coverage for, is the debris removal for if vegetation were to, block our roads. And that can be very costly at the time of disaster. And you really can't get insurance for that. So if we did instead of 1 month for disaster recovery, we did 2 months disaster recovery, that would leave us $700,000 or $800,000 for debris removal or other costs associated with a disaster. So instead of, I guess, I'm throwing it out for discussion. Instead of having a 25% minimum, bump it up to 33%. We'd be, kind of in line, a little bit more than Lighthouse Point, more than Boca, less than Juneau. For me, that kind of makes sense. So I guess I'd stop there and maybe ask for comments, or if there's other things you want to consider.
Good start. John?
So the 77% to me is a little warped. It gives a wrong impression. I mean, honestly, when we look at a disaster, I'm thinking replacement costs. I'm thinking, what's the total value of our properties that would be exposed in a disaster on a replacement cost basis, and then decide what percentage of that we should consider as to having it in our reserves. Instead of the common practice, as I understand it, of using a percentage of budget, right? Because in reality, when we start to replace a building, you're talking replacement in today's cost, not on what we spent when it was first built or whatever it might be. So I'd like to understand, pick 2 towns or whatever, and see if there's anything reasonable or valid that gives us a better picture of how much money we really should have in the case of a serious disaster, more than even just clearing the roads. I have to believe it's, as we've seen before, it's roofs, it's roadway, our roads, not just FDOT, forget FDOT roads, and the sidewalks and, other structures that we could lose. I'm thinking that 77% looks exorbitant, but I like the safety factor. I don't like you use the word surplus. that gives me the impression that that's like extra money we could spend. And in fact, to me, it's a safety buffer for disaster. And in that case, as I think I mentioned even your first presentation, I am comfortable with 1/3. I could go to 50% as the target in my own mind, because we're still a small town. And I think the mayor pointed out very well, and I think it's the reason why he asked you to add in the other small towns, because they have high percentages because it's the dollar amount that is important. You know, it's when you replace a bridge that can blow your whole 20% right there. So to net it out, I'm of the impression that we're low at 25. I don't consider 77% a surplus so much as, okay, maybe we can tone it down a bit, or thank goodness we have that so that we can direct it into fire EMS, which is a great thing, rather than take out a loan. At the same time, I'd raise the 25% somewhere between a third and 50.
I tend to agree with John. I think it's not so much the percentage. You have to focus also in on the dollar amount because we are small, so we don't have that large a budget, but there are certain costs that have nothing to do with the percentage of your budget. It has to do with as replacement costs. And we have to look at how much would we need to get up and running, because you won't be able to wait for insurance to pay out. You won't be able to wait for the state or FEMA to come in and help. You need that money right then.
Exactly.
So I don't have a problem with having 77%. Plus, as he said, we can now have some that we can use towards the cost of setting up the fire rescue. So it will be a little bit lower after we finish doing that. And I would also have no problem setting it at 50% because we may need it. You know, they're showing more and more hurricanes, more and more damage. Even if the hurricane doesn't hit, there's flooding. And we need to be prepared.
Peg?
Thanks, Mayor. At the last meeting, I requested of Marshall if he knew or could find out what FDOT would or would not pay in the case of a pretty big direct hit or a major disaster here. And then on top of that, requesting what our insurance would cover. And when we have those facts, we can maybe then assess what would be our costs if we were to get a big storm, a direct hit. I think I've been evacuated from here about 13 times in 30 years, including Andrew, which originally was hitting here as of midnight the night before it hit Miami and then some. And the reason I'm saying that is what if it didn't turn that night? It was hitting Boca that night, 1992, like 2 days ago. So if Marshall could provide that data, we can make a pretty good analysis, I think. I did look up FDOT and I found one Channel 7 report that stated that FDOT only pays 10% if their road failure causes accidents, if say a light is out or the road buckles. And another one where it said it cleaned up half of the storm destruction and debris on the road. So I don't know, those are just online reports, but if we get those figures, we can go forward. Other than that, on a philosophical basis, I agree with Commissioner Shoemaker and David that we need to have some kind of middle road there pending these other facts.
First of all, thank you. Okay.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I forgot to say that.
And because I'm not going to agree with a lot of what you said, doesn't diminish what work you've done here by any means. My conclusion's a little different than yours, that's all. But number one, I strongly object to the term surplus. Okay, these are just unassigned, not surplus. And I guess they're unassigned, but I was under the impression our unassigned was around 6 million, a little over 6 million. Well, that would be 50%, not 77%. So you're including something more than our unassigned.
Yeah, it's the assigned and unassigned. So yeah, the 25% is right. This is assigned and unassigned. So what this does not include is like restricted and committed and things like that. But
so we have some of the assigned as well.
it's the 25%, up to the 25 is assigned. 2 months for budget stabilization,
Gotcha.
1 month for disaster recovery.
All right, so we have some other assigned in this 77%, and there's more than the 6 million.
No, the 77 represents the 9 million. The 9
The 9
million.
million.
Yes, so
So-
the first three is up to the 25%.
Gotcha.
And
So
then the-
Matt, I must be wrong on our unassigned being 6 million.
No, you're
that's right.
correct. She's
You're right.
saying the 77% represents 9 million. And
Yes.
you have about
So,
a 1/3 that is assigned.
Right.
And then you have about 2/3 that's unassigned.
so we have 9 million unassigned.
No, 9 million.
No,
in
we have
total.
9 million in total.
Right.
Of that 9 million, 6 million is unassigned.
Well, let's not play word games here then. So let me be very specific. If we have 6 million unassigned, why are you showing 77%?
Because I considered,
don't
in
consider
order
it.
to compare it to all the other municipalities, for example, Ocean Ridge, they don't make that distinction. It's basically,
Okay,
they just
So-
they don't set aside, they don't, at least not that I could see,
okay.
that there's a specific amount for budget stabilization and
All right, so
disaster.
they're all total. So
These are all,
so
it's all
apples to
comparable.
apples then.
It does, yes, it is all apples to apples.
No, that's fine.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yes,
No
all
problem.
apples to apples.
The cost to hold reserves, you're 100% with you. It costs us to hold the reserves. And that cost is not so much an inflationary cost. It's the cost of what we could get if we invested it, which is not a whole lot. Now we're at 1/10 of 1%, which is absurd. I mean, we could have treasuries at 1.3, 1.4. So we got to look at our investments right here. So that's got to be fixed. I'm glad you found that. So there is a cost involved, plain dollars and cents, costs us money to hold reserves. No question about it. It's clear just from this chart of looking at a handful of towns, the smaller the town, the higher the percentage of reserves, other than one town, which is 13 million, Tequesta. Basically, the smaller the town, the higher the percentage, or they fall into high percentage brackets. That's all. I don't know what the right number is. I don't know that we can compute it, based on purely a statistical analysis. A lot of it comes down to, how many bridges do you have? How many sidewalks do you have? How many miles? How many roofs? Blah, 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 blah. And I don't know that when it's all said and done, there is a formula that we can apply. A lot of it comes down to, what are you really comfortable with?
Absolutely.
You
That's
know,
what the
So,
purpose of.
but you need some base data to get comfortable, and you're starting to supply that, which is terrific. My gut is to take a couple of $1 million out of there and put it against fire rescue. I don't know if it's 2 million's right or 3 million's right. It's not all of it. My gut tells me that's a bad move, because then you're left with nothing. And that's a problem in my mind. But I don't know what else, if we were to go after and say, well, let's look at 10 more towns, you got enough base data here. We are, it's starting to track. So if we got 10 more towns, not going to tell us a whole lot more. I think we need to spend some time thinking about it, chatting about it a little bit more, see what we get comfortable with. We do need to understand the insurance more. No question about it. We've got a bridge going into Bellito. Is that covered? How much of it's covered? If that bridge gets washed out, what's it going to cost us? So we need to learn more about that. We need to learn more about our sidewalks. If our sidewalks get washed out, are we covered? What portion's covered? So I think that's the next step. And I know you're already working on that. So we need to learn more about coverage. I agree with you completely on, even if it's covered, we're not going to see the money very quickly. So how much cash are we comfortable with that, or money, maybe we should be looking at setting up some lines of credit. If we have appropriate lines of credit, maybe we spend a little bit more of this so we can access our lines. So how much money do we really want if there is a disaster? Do we need to get our hands on 2 million or 5 million? That kind of stuff. But we're making good progress here. Yeah.
Yeah, I wondered if I could ask the chief, in the past when we had these storms, even wind events, tropical storms have been a problem. Did we clear the roads? I mean, I just left. I didn't pay attention to who cleared the road, but to me, that's a key element when the residents, if they have to evacuate, how will they get home? I mean, we're not going to wait for FDOT to show up with tractors. What happened in the past, Chief? I just
Correct.
wonder.
Correct. In the past more than 13 years here, we've cleared the roads a couple times. We had to, Public Works, chainsaws, nothing major, thank God.
Gotcha. We didn't
That's
have
what I'm
that
thinking.
100-year storm
we
that
did
they
not.
talk about
We
yet.
did not.
But, we're looking at, the catastrophe.
Right, that's what I'm asking.
And what's involved, throw a number, what it's going to cost, and how do we access those funds? And there's lots of ways to do it. It's not just wait for the insurance money.
So I do think it would be good to talk to the insurance broker. Like, I don't know, can we invite the insurance broker to come
Sure we
and
can.
talk to us?
I shouldn't be answering for you, but of course we can.
I think that would be very helpful. It's been very enlightening, and as I, have been looking at these, our coverages and things. So the debris removal was the vegetation debris removal was, something that came up because that's not something that you can insure. And I guess one question I had about that is, we have Public Works that could maybe do we have a contract in place with another? Could you comment on that? What we currently
So we have contractors in place for debris removal. So if it's bad, we have vendors that are on queue, under contract, ready to step in, and they make a certain commitment of equipment and personnel to be available to us to come through and clean it up, along with Public Works. In the future, fire would help us with that a lot more.
I'm guessing that's
Please.
not, that's a big issue, but I'm guessing that's not the big tickets. The big tickets
Initially,
is you lose a
apparently.
bridge.
Yeah.
You lose the roofs of the buildings.
Yeah. So then the other thing about the insurance is all the coverages. So I did ask, like, how quickly does the insurance company pay? And so what the broker explained to me was they do give out like some initial payments right away, as those monies are needed. And then I guess as you quantify what the actual damages are, then there is more extensive documentation that they need in order to, complete the reconstruction or, whatever it is. So perhaps the broker could make everyone feel comfortable, like what would happen in the event of a disaster, how quickly the insurance company actually pays, and the amounts that are, there's Irma. With the Irma, there are very recent examples of how.
Just for our condo, we have $1 million line of credit. Not a big deal to get, relatively inexpensive.
Right.
And, we roll it over every couple of years.
Yeah. And I don't know if that's possible for I know when I presented to the Financial Advisory Board, and talked about the situation, and one of the members said, well, why don't you invest in a certain way and borrow in a certain way, and then it washes out. But because we're limited because of the type of entity that we are, we can't make investments like a personal person can. And I guess that's where I'm coming from. Like, it's not, we're taxing our taxpayers and we're holding this money. And this, the purpose of this discussion is for what we are comfortable with, balancing out the cost of inflation and the cost of holding these funds versus the stability and, having cash on hand to pay for things. That's kind of what we're balancing here. And especially now that we have this capital project coming up, doing our best to balance. And I agree, there is no formulaic way to estimate that. But I think it's something, we go through the budget and we look at very specific line item things. And I'm just concerned that there's one big glaring thing, in my opinion, which is the inflationary costs on this $6 million that's sitting.
No, you're 100% right. And just the way I look at things, I start the way you started. I always look at the data first, and I try to get the numerics done and out of the way. That gives me a base. And then you go from there. So I very much appreciate your approach.
Oh, yeah. So perhaps we can have the insurance broker
Yeah, I think it does. You hit like 3 to 4 policies that all interlink together. I think the investment policy, you want to earn more than 0.1. Well, then you have to look at your liquidity comfort zone. Because right now we're liquid. We could take all our money out as we needed. If you want to earn more on treasuries, you have to let go of your money for a longer period of time that you can't get to, which then encumbers, if you will, almost as such as an assignment or a restriction on those funds if you want to invest them for longer periods to get better returns. Never anything exotic or exciting that you can get independently investing your money. But if we look at our investment strategy, if there are certain amounts we are willing to say we don't need to have available for a 12-month or 24-month period, and it still fits into the statute, we could find some different vehicles to generate some additional, to kind of arbitrate some of those.
If we were to go in that direction, we'd set up ladders on them. But, I don't even know what we're allowed to do, so I really
Right.
can't comment on it.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of stuff that, again, I'm excited that you guys are talking about it because these are big public policy discussions that been had, as far as I can tell, in a long time here. So these are things we need to take a look at and where our comfort zone are. And then I think once you get through the catastrophic events and investment portfolio, we have operational and practical issues that come with that. What I would say is your tax rate smoothing ability. You could spend it quickly, putting it back that's a tall order in any municipality for elected officials to say, we did it for these reasons, it made sense, but now we've dipped down a little bit, we need to start building back up. Okay, you willing to raise taxes? Generally not. Or if, again, we don't have a high volatility, but from time to time, especially once we go to a full service community, our cost structure continues to go up regardless of what happens. And we have payroll that we have to meet, and it continues to increase year to year. And if we have a couple slow property growth years, it's nice to have a little bit, I don't know what that number exactly is, but to have a little bit of money to say, this year, we don't have to raise your taxes to cover it. We can just use some reserves and kind of float our tax rate over a period of time, that smoothing effect, so residents don't get really worked up.
For example, Matt, are we allowed to have a line of credit?
We can have a line of credit for public entities. We're not going to maybe find it very competitive type rates.
Yeah, so for example, and I don't know enough to say this is the right thing to do, but if we were to make some more aggressive investments, assuming that we were allowed to do these things, and we set them as ladders, and we had a backup line. So if we needed to access money, we had the line of credit waiting there for us. So there are things that one can do, but again, Matt knows the limitations. I don't know what they are.
Well,
And
a
I'm not
laddered
a
structure
financial
would
analyst.
be maybe something to consider, but you have to get out there pretty far in the yield curve before you start seeing any return at all.
Whatever it is, it's better than 0.1.
Well, a 2-year treasury is only 0.23. And you've gotten, instead of having risk of, as Marshall said, being entirely liquid at 0.1%, you're getting to 0.23%, and you've lost a lot of liquidity because your investments are tied up for a 2-year period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to get anywhere near 1%, you've got to be out near 10 years in terms
Understood.
of treasuries.
Yeah, but
So our
hypothetically,
investment vehicles are more with an objective of being safe as opposed to being.
I totally
generating
get it.
yield.
All I'm saying is, maybe you put $1 million out there 10 years.
Yes, we could
And then
probably
you put
take some
another $1 million
portion.
out only 5 years.
Yeah.
So there are ways to go about it. That's all I'm suggesting.
And you know what's exciting? You have the ability to do this.
Yeah.
Take a
And-
moment,
And then you
drink
keep the
that
rest
in.
of it
That's
back,
great as a
and you
community.
spend it. That's what it's there for projects. That's why you have reserves, to do projects.
And you mentioned earlier, Mayor, about the cost, the opportunity cost of having the reserves. And there's also, the opportunity cost when you can't get the cash quickly to really fix some major issues for the town that will become a huge problem for the residents, whatever it might
Well,
be.
that's why you have a line of credit. Now, you're going to
Exactly.
pay a little bit more in interest to use that line, but at least you have the security of the line.
So having enough for replacement costs on an emergency basis is not a trivial number and is not something that we can shave down, I think, to a point where it gets a little uncomfortable for a town like us on a barrier island, knowing that there are 10 to 15 hurricanes targeting us every year. Fortunately, we've won.
That's why I'm saying, I'm saying probably in my mind, we use about 2 million of the 9, but to my mind, it's 6 because it's only 6 that's unassigned.
Right.
So we're using a third of the unassigned portion. I'm comfortable with that. To go beyond that, I'm not so comfortable anymore. And the data is kind of starting to support that when we start to look at the analysis that's been done.
And I think the insurance broker can help us understand what type of, the replacement cost coverage that comes with the insurance policy. So, we are covered. We do have insurance in place. I can't speak to the specifics as far as, give us town hall where to get wiped, what exactly do we get?
And we have to recognize that probably 3 years, perhaps 4 years, we're going to have to replace 2 more of the vehicles in the fire department. Now, well, depending on what our cash position is, we'll either buy them or we'll lease them. But, we're taking on more financial responsibility by taking on this fire department. Those are the 2 big things that I can envision down the road. Now, if we lease them, obviously, it's not going to cost us that much. It's more of a cash flow situation. But it would be nice to be able not to lease them and not take on those interest costs in a lease, if possible. And who knows what interest rates are going to be 3-4 years from now. I won't get into the whole political scene on who's driving interest rates, but it's nice to have options, is all I'm saying.
Good. So then the follow-up action is insurance.
Yeah, insurance is the next step.
And maybe get a better handle on just all this disaster recovery costs.
Sure, we'll reach out with the insurance because there's some news from the insurance front that we have to take a look at. So that might something we have to talk about. To a point where we might need a special meeting from what the vice mayor has presented to me, that we potentially have an opportunity to capture some savings by changing insurance so I just got to see if we can reasonably do that in the timeline so we're not uncovered for any period. So we got to look at that. So we may be talking about this a lot sooner than later.
Well, we're here.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else before we move on?
Nope, that's it.
Good.
Thank you.
Great discussion.
Yeah.
Let's move on to merit increase policy for non-union employees. Want me to read the resolution into the record? Yes?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's resolution number 2021-026. Resolution of the Town Commission, the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, adopting a merit increase policy for non-union employees and amending the Town of Highland Beach salary table and providing an effective date. Marshall, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Basically what this is similar to last year is our annual salary merit increase for performance. Again, as you may recall, the union has a 3.5% guarantee in their contract. Police, based on the step, is somewhere to 3 to 5%, depending on where you are in the step increases. And this is to acknowledge the performance and activities of our non-unionized personnel. We did 4% last year. What you're seeing presented again is 4% this year. The other item that I've placed on there is, if you will, it's kind of a cost of living adjustment to the pay bands. So adjusting the pay bands by 2%. They have not been changed since the initial salary table was approved by the commission in 2013. And that 2013 study was concluded in 2012 and based basically on 11-12 numbers, which was as the vice mayor just presented, our biggest hit and had to use reserves was in 2011. So we have a salary structure that isn't on par with surrounding like-minded or like communities, the DeQuestas, the North Palms, Lighthouse Point. So basically taking our graded bands from numbers 10 through 35, adding 2% across the board. That doesn't mean it's 4% plus 2%. It's not an aggregate of the two. Employees are at 4% based on their performance in the non-union. And then the 2% just slides the salary out 2%. So the top of the salary goes up by 2%, and employees work their way there through the annual merit changes or union contract agreements.
And what was the union deal?
So the union is 3.5%.
Any questions? Comments? Anybody? No? Okay, do
Straightforward.
we
Seems reasonable to me.
need a motion on this?
I move we accept resolution number 2021-026 as presented.
Second.
All in favor, just say aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's move on to the healthcare renewal. Marshall, back to you again.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Again, these are the healthcare plans that will be offered to employees. As we'd indicated, our base plan had a 2.5% premium reduction. Again, this is very unusual, but our broker has done a great job this year and has done a good job over the last 3 years of my time here, keeping healthcare costs under control. So we took this to the Financial Advisory Board last week. They were comfortable with what is being presented to you today for the healthcare renewals with Humana. So our base plan is the no-cost plan offered to employees. You see that on the far left of the table in front of you. And then we are able to offer 2 step-ups. Again, these are what would be the employees pay the premiums above the base premium on a biweekly basis. So we've given them 2 options based on what they want and their desire based on their family needs. If they want to buy up to a more improved as far as reduction in deductibles and co-pays, they have the ability to pay on a biweekly basis to cover those premiums. The town isn't covering the buy-up plans, just we're providing the base plan, but we were able to offer some other options. So employees have a little more choice. Again, that choice is they have to pay for, but it's there. And then you see that there's an HRA for all employees too, that allows them to help supplement some of their costs, their deductibles, co-pays, insurance, whatever it might be. All other components of our offerings remain the same, which is the dental, the vision, where we cover the employees, the family, the employees have to pay for their families. And then there's all of the other, accidental death and dismemberment and all that kind of stuff. Like think of Aflac, the employees can buy into a plan that's provided to them at their cost.
Anybody?
So this should be received very positively.
I would hope.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
And it keeps us, I double checked on these same communities that we're doing the salary looks. We're on par with what these other communities are offering their employees. And the reason why I say that is we move out there, we're going to start bringing on firefighters, fire chiefs, administrative captains. We're going to start recruiting and have to start thinking of the long term of this organization. We have to be competitive with the surrounding communities that look for the same type of people, skill sets and stuff. So we're slowly getting ourselves on par.
Very good. Ev?
Yeah, no, it looks like you've done a really good job with this and options.
Mhm.
It's all about options.
Peggy, anything?
No, I think it's a great series of options and I really would like our employees to know we value their work and their contributions to the town. And so if this makes life a little easier, that's great.
For sure.
Looks good to me.
Okay. One thing, not really a question, but you might want to update the commission on roughly what percentage or how many people take the additional options.
10, 12 buy-ups.
Right now, there's about 30 who are in the base plan, and there's about 12 that are in the buy-up plan.
Gotcha. Okay. Anything else, anyone? Nope. Thank you. I don't think we need a motion on this, correct?
Please.
Please? Okay, motion, please.
I move we accept the approval of the healthcare plan.
Renewal, yeah.
Renewal.
I second that.
All in favor, just say aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's move on to commission comments. John, got any words of wisdom for us?
Sure. Recently, we had a problem with the sewage backing up in our condominium complex.
Ooh.
And was noticed by one of our staff driving through the parking lot at 8 o'clock in the morning, and immediately contacted Pat Roman, who immediately came over and to determine if it was a problem with the town or with the condo. And so I want to thank Pat Roman for being of excellent service, determined that it was not a town problem. And the bad news was it was our problem. And we were up to it.
Good for Pat.
Which we got the right equipment in, very expensive, but we solved it. So anyways, the point is, we had a good response from Pat and his crew. Secondly, we are making progress on our veterans website. Looking forward to doing that. In fact, we'll be having a meeting around mid-September as we get really into it. And I think we'll see a lot of progress there. Lastly, I have recently been approached by, I don't know how many people in the town hall and outside the town hall, commenting on the behavior, effectiveness, morale, and just the overall effectiveness of this commission. And I'm not trying to just give a praiseworthy comment, but the feedback has been consistent for months. It continues to actually surprise me because it seems like we have a normal operating routine and a practice that is open to communication without conflict. We can disagree without, disharmony. So I just wanted to comment to the town that I appreciate the feedback for those who do take the time to see what we are doing up here, to evaluate what we're doing and that we're going in the right direction. I think it is a positive statement. I also think it becomes really important because we are facing some big increases in responsibilities with fire, EMS, and all of the work it's going to take to do that. So I just think that overall, a sense of communication based on facts, a facts-based practice to gain trust and harmony is what will earn the trust of the residents. And I think that was worth stating officially. And so I thank you.
Nicely stated. Here, here. Try to follow that one.
That's a tough one to follow, but I want to add just one point. We can operate the way we do because we have the backup of our wonderful staff. Without that, we would not be able to function quite so well.
Absolutely.
Peggy?
Yes, thanks. While we're doing that, I'd like to thank the town manager. It took a Spartan to do this job. And also to add that Natasha did a superb job on these financials and took a clean, fresh look at presenting us with some different angles. And I'd like to personally thank her for that.
For sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, big thank you to town hall staff in gathering all this information. I got a lot of really good information from staff, and I know they're all busy and I keep bothering them with requests. So I think town hall staff is high professionals, high performing, thorough. So a big thank you to them for that. And another thank you is about the widening of the Bellito entrance. I've lived in my house since 2013, and there's been these hedges between A1A and the bridge, and you always wonder like, why are these hedges here? Because it's very tight for pedestrians. And even people who don't live in Bellito, you see a lot of people walking over the bridge to walk in the neighborhood. So thank you to the town for widening the road. I think it helps with the safety of the pedestrians for that little stretch. And I think it will be, everybody's going to really love it once it's all completed. So thank you.
I just have to say that it's a pleasure working with all of you. We all bring something different backgrounds to the table here. And it's just, I'm being redundant. It's a pleasure. It really is a team effort. We can agree to disagree and we don't hate each other afterwards, which is wonderful. And I think good things come out of it. So thank you all. And good to work with you too, Marshall.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Chief. The campaign for the fire department, the educational campaign. T, I haven't prepared you for this, but do you want to come out and chat a little bit about where we stand and help me update the group? We all know that the slogan for the campaign is our town, our station, and our heroes. And I believe the first email drop will be sometime either next week or the following week.
Yes.
I'll turn it over to you from here.
Yes, that's correct. So we've been working hard with PACE. They've presented a lot of deliverables to date. We've gotten some rough drafts of the email campaign, the direct mail campaign, the website update, the social media campaign. We've gotten this morning, actually, the 90-second video that will go out. So there's a lot of new information that's going to be pushed out to the public to educate on the fire rescue department. And we're excited to move forward.
Any question? No? Okay, it's starting to look good. It's coming together and he's doing a great job on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all I have. Marshall, you have anything you want to add?
Just 3 o'clock group hug outside. Just kidding.
Chief?
No, everything's going great.
Okay, Chief, got anything? No? Anything from the newspaper?
I guess
come on.
Are we going to talk about the next
Sure.
meeting? When
What was that?
are we going to talk about a schedule for our next meeting, or when is the next meeting?
Yeah.
I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get this figured, confirmed here.
Thank you. Thank you. We
When
did
are
this
we and when
yesterday.
aren't we?
We had a wonderful activity yesterday trying to make sure we all had different dates. Every single person I talked to yesterday had different dates. So the September 7th meeting, because of the holiday, will be canceled. On the 13th of September, we have a budget meeting at 5:01. On the 21st of September, we have a 1:30 town commission meeting, followed promptly by a 5:01 budget hearing for final approval of the budget. So I would have to say that those are the meetings that are on the books. I will have some conversation with the insurance broker that the vice mayor has spoken with. If there is some opportunity for some savings by changing, I just got to see if that's logistically possible to make that transition. And if we did that, you would have to approve that change. So if I need a special meeting, I will reach out and we will try to come up with a date where we can talk about insurance. I just have to see from the broker, can we technically put it in place fast enough? Luckily, I did check with the purchasing policy. That activity is exempt from our traditional procurement procedure. We could do a direct negotiation, which the vice mayor has commenced that process. So what the firm has said, and they're a big municipal broker, so they do a lot of municipalities. So it wasn't like we went to the local Allstate broker and tried to pull this together. This is another firm that does municipal insurance and are a big competitor with FIMIT and have the ability to offer all the same policies at a I would say, significant savings. So if they can put all that in place and guarantee we do not lose coverage on property, workers' comp, auto, if we don't lose, we can't have, when we're in hurricane, I can't have a day that we're not covered.
Yeah.
Just, I can't, I
No, no.
wouldn't sleep at night. So if they can put that in place and I can find some hair on Matt's head to have him lose pulling this off, we will be able to do that. But that may necessitate a special meeting. I know everybody's got some schedule stuff, so we'll try to see if we can't pull that off, or if they can work with the 13th on some other commitments. But that would be the only circle on your calendar that we would have to try to figure out.
I guess if I could just say, so this insurance broker, we have our flood policy with,
No,
That's-
flood's separate. Flood's a
but
separate.
it's through that broker.
Oh, it's through
It's
that broker. Yes, okay.
And we also have coverage for our gas tank, storage tank.
Yeah,
Sorry, I knew some sort of tank.
yeah.
So
So
it's a broker that we currently have
in place.
policies through.
It's just, I want to make sure if we say no to FIMIT and
Sure,
yes to
absolutely,
PRIA,
absolutely.
we could do that on October 1 and it's seamless. That's all.
Right.
But it is you did great work. It's a big saving. So we probably should take a look if it's a real option, because it's real money on the table. So
Good, good. All right, just to regroup, 913-501, 921-130, 921-501.
correct.
It's likely another one.
Anything else from anyone? No? Good.
Good.
Okay, 3:01, we will adjourn.